Well, hey, everybody. This is Laurel here at KCKM, and I'm excited to announce that we've got the amazing Michael Peterson on the line with us, and he's got a couple of brand new albums out, and so we're going to hear from him and hear about his new projects and everything going on. So where are you calling from this morning?
Hey, I'm calling from my home in Las Vegas. It's a great place to live. I love it here so much. How are you today?
I'm doing really good. Just sitting here, just finished the show, and so was actually just waiting for your call. So I understand you've got a couple new albums out, and you wanted to tell us about that. And I've got finished looking at your website, and you've got a lot of things going on. So how about you tell us about it?
Well, thank you for asking. And, I made a lot of records over the years, and some of those albums never got heard by anybody except the people that came to my shows, because at the time those records were made, I didn't have a record deal and didn't have distribution. So I recently signed a new deal with Star Vista, a record label, and they loved these two albums and said, we think people are going to love these records and we should put them out. So we picked this weekend in particular because the We Are Veterans album, which is the first of the two, is songs that are all focused on really subjects related to patriotism and military families and veterans. And this weekend being Memorial Weekend, it's a time for mindful, thoughtful, consideration of the sacrifices that have been made by so many on behalf of freedom. And so it just seemed appropriate that the single, which is called The Old Army Hat, which is off this album, which is the story of a World War II veteran who, it takes us on a journey from him returning from World War II all the way through to him being an old man, visiting the World War II Memorial, and a chance encounter that he has with a young boy that changes both of their lives. It's an incredible song. And that is the We Are Veterans album. It's just full of songs that will really stir your heart and make you smile. And the other album is an album called Down on the Farm. And this is an album that was originally made for the New Holland Tractor Company, and it was made to raise money for FFA and for the American Cancer Society. So it was available only at shows that we did at New Holland dealerships around the country, and we raised a lot of money for FFA youth programs and for American Cancer Society. And, now it's an album filled with great country music, 90s production, and 90s country is making quite a resurgence. So they felt as though this is new music that people would hear that appreciate 90s country, and they would really hear it as new music. So we're very excited about all of that. So thank you for asking.
Well, both sounds like a great fit for our station, and I'm excited about it. But before we go on, for the few people that aren't familiar with you, what are some of the songs that you know that everybody has heard that's been released years ago?
Sure. So I had two number one songs back in the late 90s, From Here to Eternity, which was a number one Billboard hit, and then Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, which was the number one on CMT and Gavin, and R&R back in the day, and then was the number three on Billboard. Both of those songs are songs that are now in regular airplay on a lot of stations that still play, the classics. So Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, and From Here to Eternity.
I think Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie is my favorite out of those that you said, and that's one that we hear on a regular basis still, so that's never gone out of style. Everybody likes that song.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. It still is a song that puts a smile on people's faces. So, after all these years, how could I be any happier?
It's great. It's just fun. I mean, so there's so much gloom and doom, but Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie it's just fun just because it's fun. That's it. There's no other reason for it.
Right.
But
right.
So now what I wanted to ask, so what is the inspiration behind, especially the one about the veterans? Because I did watch a previous interview you had with somebody, and you got quite a bit of history and quite a bit of background there. So what was the inspiration behind that one?
Well, on the heels of 9/11, I wanted to do something to make a contribution to help support our men and women in harm's way. So I asked my agent if he could, connect me with opportunities to serve. And that led to, over a course of 7 or 8 years, 11 tours to Afghanistan and Iraq, where I would be there sometimes up to 3 weeks at a time, performing in forward operating bases, where nobody ever went. Sometimes my audience, I'd have 5 people because it was such a small base.
Oh, wow.
So along the way, I met and ended up being married to a U.S. Army colonel by the name of Jill Chambers. Jill was wounded at the Pentagon on 9/11 and suffered severe post-traumatic stress, but overcame her post-traumatic stress and has spent the rest of her journey since then equipping other people with dealing with post-traumatic stress to learn how to live, a new life and a better life. And so, for me, with over 500 performances for military veterans and military families and deployed service members, this really became a part of my life, and it's changed my life in profound ways. Where probably the most profound way it changed me as a performer was I realized, if you're in the middle of the desert and you're trying to, reach a group of service members who just got back from a patrol where they were kicking down doors looking for the bad guys, I'm not really there at that moment, because I'm somebody and I had some hit records and I'm there to play my music. It's not that, really. You're there for one reason, and that's to try to help them relax, to help them laugh a little bit, to smile, and to have a moment of brevity, have a moment of levity in the midst of this stress that they're under. And so, that really profoundly changed my life when I really grabbed a hold of that. And it has changed my performances ever since then and how I look at them. I remember Minnie Pearl saying once that there's 2 kinds of performers. There's a performer who walks on the stage and says, "Here I am." Everybody claps. And then there's a performer that walks out and says, "There you are." And I love that. And I just have leaned more in the direction since those experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, more into the recognition that you're there for that audience. And what can you do to help them to feel better and to have a great experience?
Well, I think that's really special, and that's one thing that I don't think we've ever had enough awareness about. I think the idea of the American soldier has been kind of glamorized, and a lot of people don't really think about what really goes into that and what they actually go through and the horrific things that they encounter and they see and feel during that time, and they're doing it not for themselves but for us.
Yeah, absolutely. When 1% of Americans serve in the military, that means that a very large percentage of people in our nation don't have a direct contact or experience with what it means to be in the military. And so there is a bit of a disconnect, and one of the things that I hope we have in this country is an opportunity for that disconnect to be bridged, so that we can continue to have a deep appreciation for the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform.
Well, now, I love that you released it today. Yeah, today is the release date, just in time for Memorial Day weekend, and I think that is an amazing story. And then you already said that you did the Down on the Farm, is that correct, is the next one? And that was for...
Yeah, as well. So we did that for FFA, for the American Cancer Society.
Okay, and what was the inspiration behind that one?
Well, the New Holland Corporation became a tour sponsor of mine. And they were looking for some creative ways to reach new people and get new people into their dealerships. So we came up with this idea of making an album of songs that, that would really appeal to country listeners. And the idea was that we could have these fundraisers at the dealerships around the country. So over the course of about 4 years, I visited a lot of dealerships and we did concerts at the dealerships. And at those concerts, we would have FFA students who would be there, and they would sell the CDs to the audience during the event, and that money would go 100% towards FFA or to the American Cancer Society. And
FFA, that's the kids, the Future Farmers of America,
Future
correct?
Farmers of America, right? Yeah, really, our future. Really, if you think about it, where would we be without food?
Right, right. We can't live without them. And what is that? Now, I know what the American Cancer Society does, but what do the funds do for the kids in that program?
I think they help provide scholarships. FFA, there's a lot of kids that are deeply involved in that, and there's a lot of expenses that are involved in raising animal projects, going to events. So it was really just to help support those programs.
Well, that's great, and I can't wait to hear both of them. So, especially the one about the veterans. So, I really love that, and I think that especially here in the West Texas area, that's something that's going to go over really big. And so, we only have a few minutes left. So, what do you have any tour dates around this area?
No, I
We're in
don't
West
have.
Texas, so we're kind of near Midland and Odessa.
Yeah. Now, I actually years ago I spoke in all the schools in Midland and Odessa, the middle
Oh
schools
wow.
and schools. So I know that area pretty well. I love that area of the country, and I would sure love to come back and do a concert. Maybe we could do something for your listeners. We could have a special listener appreciation show or something. I would love to do that.
That would be great. That's an amazing idea. Like I'm completely down for that. And so you have my phone number since
I
you
love
just
that.
called me.
Scott
That's an
Sexton
amazing
can help
idea.
with that. Yeah. Maybe Scott can help us. We can raise some money for some organizations while we're there.
Yeah, definitely. And there's quite a few that support both veterans and the farmers and all that kind of stuff here. It's great. So this is the perfect area for that.
Well,
So
thank
what
you,
else
Laura.
do you
I
have?
appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Well, what else do you have going on? Like any other projects? I mean, you finished those, and now the work of promoting
Yeah.
them is out there, and I know that's a big job. But what else
Sure.
do you have, kind of, even if it's in your mental wish list of things to do?
Sure. So I have a children's book that I wrote with my wife and the original illustrator for the Muppet Babies project with Jim Henson. We wrote a children's book called Little Is Good, and we're in the project of launching that. And then I have a new album that I'm working on of brand new music that will just be recorded this year. So I'm just excited about the opportunity to share moments with people that cause us all to leave feeling better than we did when we arrived.
Well, I think that's great, and I can't wait to know when the children's book comes out. Of course, I've got kids, so they will enjoy that. And we do a lot with literacy around here too, so that's a fun idea.
Great.
And what inspired that? Did you write it, or did your wife write it, or both of you?
Well, my wife is a very petite human being. So she was always little when she was a little girl. She was little for her age. And so her whole life she's been, small. And so, as she became a leader in the Pentagon, a full colonel working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I would often see her come into her office after meetings, and she would put her hands on her hips and sort of with a little bit of an attitude and a smile on her face, she'd say, "Little is good," and it would always make me laugh, And one day I looked at her and I said, "Hey, wait a minute." She said, "What?" I said, "I see in my mind a story, a children's story. And you know how kids, when they're little, sometimes they feel like scared because everything is so big around them." And I said, "Wouldn't it be great if there was a children's book and the character's name was Little is Good? Like if that was her name. And what if she had all of these adventures where she confronted these big fears that little kids have, only to discover that being little was an advantage, not a disadvantage." And so that was the inspiration for the book. And if you see the illustration of Little Is Good, you'll recognize that it's an illustration of my wife as a little girl. And,
Oh, wow.
and it's a spectacular book. When you look at it, it's like reading Where's Waldo, because there's so many illustrations and there's so much stuff that's hidden. And the guy who did the illustrations is a fellow named Guy Gilchrist. And Guy has been the owner and illustrator of the Nancy comic strip for years and years. It's been all over the world syndicated. And he was the founder of Muppet Babies with Jim Henson. And it's just a spectacular book, and we're really looking forward to bringing that to the market.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. That sounds so amazing. Little is big. A lot of people don't think about the little guy. They think about, being too big or too heavy or too tall or whatever, but little people have their own things going on too.
Well, yeah, and it's targeted for kindergarten through second grade, and the title of the book is Little is Good. So her name is actually the message. Little
so that
is
is the character's name. Little is good.
Yeah, Is Good is her last name, Isgood. So Little is
Oh,
her
that's
first
awesome.
name. Little is Good.
That's great. I can't wait. Well, all right then. So I'm going to look forward to hearing from you again, and especially about our future show plans. I think the listeners are going to absolutely adore that. And thank you so much for calling. And now it's michaelpetersonmusic.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we can find the album, we can find tour dates, and everything else going on with you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, thank you. And like I said, we'll look forward to hearing from you again. And you have a fabulous Memorial Day weekend.
You too.